You're listening to the Dispassionate ADF Veteran's Voice. Each episode is generated and narrated using artificial intelligence, specifically Google's Notebook LM, drawing from official records like the Royal Commission Final Report, government strategies, inquiry reports, and lived experience accounts. The narration is delivered in American accents, as that is all that is available in this emerging AI tool. Don't let that distract you. This isn't the voice of any one veteran or organisation. It's Australia's veterans' story, told through evidence, not opinion. Here are your hosts.
What happens when the world, this really structured life with a clear purpose, shared identity, what happens when that just disappears?
Yeah.
Leaving behind that whole framework, maybe even your sense of self, to face a civilian world that can feel completely foreign.
It's a profound shift.
Exactly. So today, we're taking a deep dive into that journey, the transition from military to civilian life. And it's way more than just changing jobs, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's fundamental. Identity, purpose, the social connections. It touches everything for the veteran and their family.
We pulled together quite a bit for this one. Reports from the Veteran Families Forum, the Women Veterans Forum, those big DVA and defense strategies. AIHW suicide monitoring data.
That's the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare data, yeah. Very important.
And academic research, too.
Yeah.
Our goal here is to really unpack the emotional side, the cultural adjustments, the practical stuff.
And the sheer diversity of experiences. It's not monolithic.
No, definitely not. And why understanding these lived experiences is just so critical for, long-term well-being. Okay, let's get into it.
What's really striking, I think, is just how multifaceted this transition is. It impacts every corner of a person's life, and definitely those around them, too. The sources really paint a vivid picture.
For so many people, military service isn't just what they do, it's who they are. It shapes everything.
Yeah.
So when that core identity, that structure suddenly vanishes, what fills that space?
Well, often it's a deep sense of loss, almost visceral. One veteran put it so powerfully, they said, "On discharge, I was lost. You need to belong." You see, the ADF, the Australian Defence Force, it instills this mindset. Service and team and mission before self. You're trained, really molded into being an intricate part of a large machine.
Right.
Where, as the sources say, weakness is driven out and your personal well-being, it kind of plays second fiddle.
Yeah.
So leaving that, especially if it wasn't entirely on your own terms, it creates this huge void. Yeah, and what our sources call a cognitive tension. It's this clash, between that ingrained military way of thinking, mission first, hierarchy, collective focus, and this civilian world that's often unstructured, individualistic.
Where suddenly personal goals are the main thing.
Exactly. And it's incredibly disorienting because, well, the civilian world just isn't structured like defense. It's a culture shock.
So it's not just missing the unit, it's like feeling fundamentally misunderstood. And beyond that identity piece, there's the whole social side, going from that incredibly tight-knit group
where you live, work, travel together.
Yeah, to just being another civilian. It sounds incredibly isolating. Is that kind of disconnection unique for veterans?
It feels remarkably unique, yes. Social disconnection, alienation, they're major risks. But it's deeper than just missing mates. You go from sharing this common language, maybe a dark sense of humor, this unspoken understanding forged in intense situations, to suddenly feeling like civilian chit-chat is, I don't know, superficial, alien almost.
Yeah.
And then you layer on top the public narratives, the hero or the broken veteran stereotypes.
Which just simplifies everything and doesn't help connection.
Exactly. It makes it harder for them to connect authentically. It kind of puts them in a box, reinforces that isolation rather than letting them just be.
I can see how that makes it tough to even explain what they've been through. And you mentioned practical things too, like jobs. How does that fit in?
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge piece. Translating military qualifications, skills, it's often a real struggle. We heard from one veteran whose son always spoke of the fact that his qualifications were not recognized outside of the Navy.
Frustrating.
Very. And then there's the perception issue. Some potential employers, sadly, might see employing a combat vet was a liability. Whether that's fair or not, it's a perception that exists.
And that directly hits their ability to find a new purpose, a new community through work, reinforces that feeling of not belonging. Okay, this next point is, well, it's really stark and quite worrying. This whole transition period is flagged as one of the most vulnerable times. The data here is pretty sobering.
It really is. The research consistently points to higher risks, PTSD, depression, anxiety, substance abuse during and after transition. And alarmingly, suicide is named as the leading cause of death for younger ex-serving members.
Leading cause.
Wow. The stats are stark. Ex-serving males from the permanent forces. 42% more likely to die by suicide than other Australian males. And for ex-serving females, the rate is more than double that of other Australian females, regardless of service type.
Double. That's huge.
It is, and you hear it in their own words. One person shared, and this really stays with you, in regards to suicide, it was enough to almost push me over the edge. I mean that literally. I have had and sometimes still have to battle this idea that life isn't worth continuing.
That level of honesty is just, it really cuts through. That makes me think about the culture itself. You mentioned how the military shapes people.
Yeah.
How does that culture complicate things when someone leaves and needs help?
Yeah.
Especially in a civilian system that expects openness.
That's a really critical question. Our sources talk about this ingrained vulnerability stigma within the ADF.
Okay.
Basically, anyone seen as having a vulnerability, could be physical, could be mental health. They risk being viewed as, and this is a direct quote, no longer serviceable, not unlike a piece of broken equipment or kit.
Wow. Like equipment.
Yeah, and that perception can lead to shame, ridicule, even being ostracized by your own unit. So what do people do? They suppress it, they hide it.
So they learn not to ask for help.
Exactly. Then they transition out, and suddenly they're in a civilian system that needs them to be vulnerable, to be transparent, to actually get support. It's a massive clash of cultural conditioning.
And of course, this journey isn't just about the individual veteran. It ripples outwards, doesn't it? Families are right there, often dealing with so much unseen stuff.
Absolutely. Families are often the first to observe changes in their loved one's mental or emotional state. They're frequently the first responders, providing that initial mental health first aid and support.
But they need support too.
Desperately. They need the best resources and access to high-quality assistance themselves. And you have to remember, the military lifestyle itself, the constant moves, the deployments, it hugely disrupts family life.
I read that quote about the senior officer, 27 moves, 10 different schools for the kids.
Astounding, isn't it? Across countries, states, it often means partners are left raising children alone for months on end.
That's an immense burden. Logistically, sure, but emotionally, I can only imagine.
The emotional toll, yeah, it's often way heavier. There's this quote from an Army veteran's wife. Her husband had PTSD. She described getting a notebook handed to me by Les from the Army to inform me of what to expect. 17 years of being an Army wife and 8 postings, and all I got at the end was a notebook and a sick husband.
Yeah. It's a notebook. That's heartbreaking. It really highlights the lack of practical support for those families on the front line.
It does, and the sources warn, failing to support families properly, it risks serious consequences, family violence and harm, homelessness, incarceration, and also suicide. And they specifically mention, but not only suicide, it's the ripple effect of suicide.
The ripple effect of suicide. That phrase really lands. What does that look like practically? What does that ripple cause?
Well, it means the trauma doesn't just stop with the person, it flows outwards. It can cause severe emotional distress for the family left behind, financial chaos, long-term mental health problems.
And for the kids?
Kids can struggle enormously with grief, their own identity, school performance. The whole community loses someone vital. And sadly, stigma can cling to the family, creating more pain, more isolation. It's a wound that can span generations.
And it does span generations, right? You mentioned research on the children of Vietnam veterans.
Yes, exactly. That research found they were more likely than the national average to experience harsh parenting, more likely to be bullied at school, more likely to have learning difficulties. It clearly shows an intergenerational dimension to PTSD. It's a complex legacy.
And then there's another layer we need to talk about, the unique, often really distressing experiences of women veterans. Our sources really highlighted this.
Yes, they did. Women veterans often describe facing disempowering experiences within what's called an established, dominant, masculinized culture.
So misogyny, harassment.
Widespread misogyny, yes. Sexual harassment, even assault, military sexual trauma, or MST. And often the women reporting it are seen as the problem.
That's awful.
It is. One participant said, quite bluntly, "I don't know any women who have been in defense as long as I have who don't have a story about sexual harassment." Some described horrific experiences, raped by peers, by senior officers, their careers threatened if they spoke up.
And other forms of discrimination, too.
Yes. Things like being told being a mother has no place in the military, or facing medical discharge, or pressure to leave because of gender-specific health issues like needing a hysterectomy.
So these experiences add trauma, but also make it harder to even form that military identity in the first place.
Yeah.
And then harder to transition.
Exactly right. It makes it difficult for them to establish that identity within the ADF. And then when they separate, it often leads to their service being invisible or misunderstood in the civilian world. Their specific struggles get overlooked, affecting jobs, healthcare access, everything. It's like a double burden.
Okay, so this is clearly not a new issue. Australia's been trying to support veterans for a long time. What can we learn from that history? Does it explain some of the current challenges?
It does offer context. The repatriation system, really grew after World War II. Eventually, the repatriation department became the Department of Veterans Affairs, DVA, back in 1976.
And DVA changed how it worked.
Yeah, it shifted from providing healthcare directly to purchasing services. It embraced IT, aiming for joined-up, veteran-centric support. But even earlier efforts, like the War Service Home Scheme after World War I, well, it aimed to help with housing, but faced huge admin hurdles. Some veterans even had to walk off the land.
So good intentions, but persistent struggles with actually delivering effective support.
Pretty much. It shows this ongoing effort, but also highlights those systemic difficulties that, frankly, still challenge the system today.
Which brings us to the present. Despite that long history and those intentions, the whole transition ecosystem, as the sources call it, sounds really complex and still faces a lot of criticism. You used an analogy, like a pool with lots of swimmers, but maybe not enough lifeguards, if the lifeguards aren't coordinated.
That's a pretty good way to put it, yeah. Many veterans feel DVA is too adversarial, too slow, even unresponsive, and overly bureaucratic. That's direct feedback.
Adversarial. That's a strong word when you're talking about support.
It is. Concerns about lack of transparency, inconsistency, even a perceived anti-veteran bias. Trust is low in both defense and DVA. Veterans talk about unbelievable legislative red tape and just barriers to access that make the whole thing overwhelming.
And if you're already struggling, that just makes you disengage, right?
Exactly. Which is the opposite of what's needed. And it's not just DVA. The wider system, the Veteran Reintegration System, or VRS, is described as highly fragmented with often contradictory messaging. There's a lack of consistent standards, accountability, even among the ex-service organizations, the ESOs. Navigating it is incredibly tough.
It sounds like a system crying out for improvement. So where are things headed? What's being done to build that better bridge we talked about?
Well, the sources do show a clear commitment now to a transformational approach. Across all the agencies involved, that whole ecosystem.
Any concrete examples?
Yes. One is the online claims system, My Service. It seems to be making a difference. Initial liability claims, processed in about 33 days now compared to an average of 84 days for other claims. That's a big jump in efficiency, making that life raft easier to reach, perhaps.
That's definitely progress. So beyond faster claims, what are the main focus areas for making the system more holistic?
Several key areas stand out. First is early preparation and using lived experience. The idea is to normalize transition talk right from day one of service.
Not just an afterthought when you're leaving.
Exactly. Prepare people mentally and practically for that cultural shift. And crucially, there's a real push now to use lived experience, veteran and family insights in designing policies and programs, building it based on real journeys.
Makes sense. What else?
Second, family engagement. Recognizing families are pivotal, so making sure they're involved through transition. Addressing practical things like affordable housing, childcare, job opportunities for partners. Moving past that old one breadwinner model,
Supporting the whole unit.
Right. Third is prevention and community connection. Shifting focus towards promoting well-being, preventing mental ill health. Using prevention and early intervention through things like place-based and community-led suicide prevention and fostering those civilian connections via veterans and families hubs like the one in Wyong, New South Wales. Building local support networks.
Integrated support.
And finally, cultural change for women veterans. Both DVA and the ADF acknowledge the need for real cultural shifts to tackle those gender issues we discussed. There's a national women veterans strategy being developed right now.
Aiming to tackle those ingrained biases.
Hopefully, yes. Creating a more inclusive environment from the get-go.
So connecting all those dots, it really does sound like a move towards a more person-centered, family-centered approach. Supporting people throughout their lives, not just at that crisis point of leaving. Building a genuinely better bridge.
That's the goal. It's a long road, but these seem like really significant steps in the right direction, making that bridge sturdy, welcoming.
So we've journeyed through this profound transition today, from military to civilian life. We've looked at the deep challenges around identity, purpose, finding your place again socially.
And the critical ecosystem of support that's trying to evolve.
Absolutely. And while big challenges definitely remain, that legislative red tape, building universal trust, ensuring everyone can actually access support, there's a clear commitment to improve. Using lived experience, focusing on prevention and early intervention, those feel like really crucial steps.
They do.
Which leaves us with a thought, really. Given everything service members sacrifice and the often hidden struggles of their transition and their family's transition, what's our collective responsibility as a community? How do we ensure that journey home isn't just coming back, but truly being welcomed into a life with purpose, with belonging?
It's a vital question for all of us.
Think about the stories, the experiences we've touched on. How might understanding these journeys better change how you interact with, how you support the veterans and families in your own community? It's complex, for sure, but it really drives home the power of perspective, doesn't it? And maybe the responsibility we all share.
You've just heard a conversation built and presented entirely by AI from official sources. No speculation, no shortcuts. From Royal Commission findings to lived experience, we're unpacking the veteran ecosystem. If this episode helped you make sense of the system or gave voice to something you've felt but couldn't name, consider subscribing and liking the channel. That way, you'll be notified when the next episode drops. Send a link to a mate if you think they might benefit from synthesizing the massive information too. We'll upload at least one a week, each tackling a major issue with clarity, dignity, and zero spin. There will be 10 main episodes and many more spin-offs. This isn't just a podcast. It's clarity that is easy to consume and will help to mobilize those who really care.